Some of you guys have been following along with me for a long time, and I don't think I've ever done a video like this. So naturally, being a horror fan and talking about these movies in passing from time to time, I thought, why not give you guys what I think are the scariest movies I've ever seen? Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Nick here from the Lost River Drive-In, and today I want to talk to you guys about some of the scariest horror movies I've ever seen throughout my life. Now, I should just preface this by saying it doesn't mean these movies necessarily scare me anymore. I'm talking mainly about the first time I saw them and what they did to me. And these aren't in any particular order except for the top spot. I don't know if the top spot's ever going to be beaten, but it's one that is just going to be etched in my memory forever. I will always remember the first experience with number one. Every other movie, who knows? And I don't have a particular number of movies here, so I'm just going to get right going. First up is going to be The Fourth Kind. Now, if you guys know anything about me, you know that I believe in aliens. I think at this point, it's almost like an irrefutable fact. There's way too much unexplained phenomena for us to just think that we're alone in all of this. We're just not. It's almost a statistical impossibility in the universe. Having said that, I've always watched documentaries and whatnot on aliens and always been enthralled by it. Well, The Fourth Kind came out in, I believe, 2008, and Mia Jovovich was in it, and I was a big fan of the Resident Evil movies around that time. So naturally, I had to check this movie out, and it freaked me the hell out. Now, part of why it freaked me out is because of the aliens, obviously. You know, I'll never see a white owl the same way again, and if I ever see a white owl outside my window, that's it, guys. I'm done. I'm not even letting them come for me. I'm done. Signing off. I'm pulling out, for real. It was also the tack that they were selling it as, which is that this was a true story and that there was all this footage that was actually real, like interspliced with the movie. Now, I know, obviously, that's Hollywood, but at the time, even if I didn't believe some of that was real, it still freaked me the hell out because it seemed so real. And it was about something that I personally believe. And I feel like a movie like this only really works on that visceral level for you if you actually believe that. So watching this movie the first time scared the absolute crap out of me. And anybody I meet that believes in aliens, I tell them, you've got to see The Fourth Kind. So it's only natural that the next movie I'd mention is Signs. A lot of people say this is M. Night's best movie, and it's kind of hard to argue that. Now, there are minor gripes that people have with this movie as time has gone on, but nobody can deny that first time you see the alien in this movie at the birthday party and the reaction of Joaquin Phoenix as well. I mean, all of it is just pure nightmare fuel. Again, this came out at a time when I was a little kid, so watching this movie for the first time and really like wondering about aliens, it scared the crap out of me. And it makes you think about, if this happened, how would it go? Would it be like this? Would we all freak out? Would we be defenseless? Like, what would happen? Signs is incredibly effective, how it is delivered to audiences, but then even more so because of the performances you get from some of these actors. So all in all, it just ends up being a truly memorable movie that I don't think I will ever lose my love for. I argue with myself back and forth whether this or Split is my favorite M. Night movie, but I don't think you can go wrong with either one. Having said that, this is scary, and Split didn't scare me. So absolutely Signs is going to make it onto this list for me. Next up is going to be The Ring, the remake of the Japanese horror film Ringu. Now let me tell you guys, this movie came out when I was 10 years old. And I remember this was back in a time when once a week, my mom and I and all my siblings, we'd go to Blockbuster and we would rent like 2 or 3 movies. And there was always a horror movie in the bunch because my mom loves horror movies. And we rented this one time. And as a child watching this for the first time, this movie traumatized me. Absolutely traumatized me. I was terrified. Whether it was the imagery, whether it was the video itself, it's just creepy because it's just all this creepy imagery and weird sounds. And then Samara was just pure nightmare fuel. I'll never look at a well the same way again. And if I ever fall into a well, I might just die of a heart attack. Like, that's how much this movie has scarred me. The Ring is one of those movies that even as an adult when I watch it, it still makes me uneasy. I've told the story many times on my channel that I did not actually watch the scene fully where Samara's hair, parts and you see her face near the end until I was 22 years old. And I'm not even kidding you. I finally forced myself to watch it because every time I watched it before then, I was just too scared of how her face was going to look. And I felt like it was going to haunt my dreams. So very effective movie in a lot of ways. Ringu is a great J-horror movie, and if you guys haven't seen it, go check it out. But The Ring is an incredible American remake of an incredible Japanese horror film, and it's one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. Next up is going to be The Autopsy of Jane Doe. Now, a little bit of backstory on this. I had heard about this, and I remembered when it was on Netflix not long after it first came out. And I was like, that's probably just some low-budget, stupid movie. I have no interest in that. And boy, was I wrong. When I was 23 years old, I was working second shift, so I'd get home around 11, 12 o'clock every night. So I'd stay up till like 5 a.m. And in that time period, I would go, hey, what are some movies I haven't watched? And I would stream them. Well, this was one of them. I decided to watch The Autopsy of Jane Doe for the first time by myself in my dark bedroom at like 2 a.m. And I had had a few beers, so I was like a little buzzed. And holy crap, that movie scared the absolute shit out of me the first time I saw it. Specifically, the scene that I always think about that just got under my skin and it worked so well was the scene where they're both in the office and the bell on the foot. You're hearing it come closer and closer. That just did something to me. That's how you do suspense. That is how you really get a visceral reaction from the viewer. The Autopsy of Jane Doe delivers in spades when it comes to that. This movie is briskly paced. It's not too long. It is just delightfully eerie. You get so many things that aren't answered. You have so many questions. But the suspense and the fear is just built up. And it is just, it is absolutely palpable throughout the movie. It's not a bunch of cheap jump scares. No, it is actual suspense. This is a great movie. Some of you guys maybe have seen it and you're like, it was okay. I feel like it was a perfect storm for me. In the dark, in the middle of the night, not entirely sober. All of that led to a pretty traumatizing experience. And I love this movie now. Now, you guys are going to see a theme with these last three. And let me just preface this whole section by saying I grew up religious. I was raised in a religious household. I was raised to believe in demons, demonic possession, stuff like that. That stuff really scared me when I was a kid and even a teenager. It was something that truly could really get a reaction out of me. So number 3 is going to be The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Now, I remember when this movie came out, again, I think I was 11, maybe 12. I can't remember exactly, but it was another one we rented. And it was another movie that my mom was like, hey, this is almost like a rite of passage. We're Christians. We need to watch this demonic possession true story movie. Holy crap, the first time I watched this movie, it freaked me out. Emily Carpenter in this movie is great. And just what they do to her, like with the makeup and how they contort her body and stuff, it's so painful looking and it's so sad. And it's on a visceral level. It just really gets under my skin. The movie itself, unlike some other demonic possession movies, it really is more sad than it is truly like jump scare and pop out at you scary. But I think that actually made it resonate more with me because as somebody that, was raised to believe all of that, it just made it so sad and so palpable and just really kind of resonated with me in a way that some of these movies don't. I've watched it since, a few times. I still think it is a great movie. I really enjoy this movie. But that first time I watched it, I will never forget because it gave me nightmares. Number 2 is going to be The Exorcist. Now, The Exorcist is a movie that you can show this to somebody nowadays and it might scare them. For the first time even, 50 years later, they might go, holy crap, that's actually scary. I think this movie is a movie that's going to live on for generations and truly just be effective in what it's trying to do, no matter when you're watching it, so long as it's the first time you're watching it. I would argue it's still effective even though I've seen it dozens of times. No longer does it scare me, but it is still incredibly eerie, creepy, and effective. I watched The Exorcist for the first time when I was like 5 or 6 years old. And again, that was because of my mother. She loved these movies. She saw this movie in its original theatrical run. She lived through the hype. She remembers all of it. And she talks very fondly about it. So this was kind of like a movie that I had to see. My siblings had to see. We had to be exposed to this movie. And I guess on one hand, I'm thankful to my mom for doing that because I think it is what started the process of me becoming such a big horror fan. But on the other hand, I'm actually kind of resentful because it scared the shit out of me as a little kid. I should not have seen that movie as a child. And I cannot tell you how long certain things in this movie just lived rent-free in my head. Obviously, the head spin. Obviously, the crucifix scene. Some of the things that the demon says. The scene in the attic. Just that scene in the attic that is just a quick scare, but it scared the shit out of me. The sound design, the visuals, the music. This movie, on a visceral human level, just gets to you. It burrows under your skin and lives there for 2+ hours. And I don't care if this movie's 50+ years old, it still works. And The Exorcist is one of those movies that I think is the movie that I can attribute to why I am as big of a horror fan as I am and why I'm so desensitized to some stuff. Because people will see stuff and they'll be like, oh, that was terrifying. And I'm like, eh. So The Exorcist, of course, had to be on here. And now, the undisputed heavyweight champion. The scariest horror film I've ever seen. Now, I know I'm going to probably get some shit for this because I know this is a more modern movie, but I don't think that time periods decide whether or not a movie can be scary or not. I actually think it's even more to this movie's credit that it's not, 50 years old and it was terrifying to me. And that's The Conjuring. Now, let me just tell you guys, as I said with the previous two movies and my upbringing, these type of demonic possession movies scare me, especially when they are not only done well and effectively like James Wan can do and nobody else can, aside from Mike Flanagan, but also when it is based off of a true story, no matter how loosely it's based off of that true story. When some of the morsels of information are purportedly true, that just makes my mind go to places. I saw this movie at 18 years old. It came out when I was 18. I had just graduated high school, and I went to the theater opening night with my best friend Dave, his ex-girlfriend, and my ex-girlfriend. They were best friends, and Dave and I were best friends. And so the four of us went, and holy crap. There were multiple points throughout this movie where I was like shitting bricks in the theater. I'm not even going to lie. I'm not the type of person that watches movies like this. There were multiple points where I was like, I was still watching, but I was admittedly doing everything I could to try to prepare myself for what I knew was coming. And that was just scares like nobody else does it. James Wan can craft these ghost stories that can make the simplest things scare the shit out of you. When a bunch of pictures falling onto the staircase, just these simple, effective scares that James Wan does. He can make the most simplistic things scare you. I mean, so much about this movie. Hide and clap. You name it. It's just terrifying. I walked out of the theater, looked at Dave and said, I think that's the scariest movie I've ever seen. And I still hold true to that to this day. It was the scariest theater experience I've ever had. And that whole third act with Bathsheba and the possession and everything still gives me goosebumps. It's just creepy. It is just creepy. Say what you will about the Warrens, all of that, I don't care. This movie rules, and it scared the crap out of me the first time I saw it. So again, I didn't have a set number of movies that I was going to go over tonight and say, oh, this is the scariest and this is the 8th scariest. No, except for The Conjuring. That is the scariest. All the other films, they're just also up there in my top 10. I think I did 8 of them, so we'll just do top 8. But I want to hear what you guys have to say down below in the comment section. What you think about these movies and what are some of the scariest movies you've ever seen and why. Thank you so much for watching this video. Leave a like on it, subscribe if you haven't already, and this is Nick at the Lost River Drive-In, and I am pulling out.